Well, hey, everybody, this is Lisa from It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. We believe that every parent can confidently homeschool their child, and we are here to give you the tools, tips, and resources to do so. I am so excited about this week's podcast. Today, I have with us Jean Carter Burke from College Prep Genius, and Jean and I have known each other for a couple of years, and the more I get to know her, the more I just love her. She is such a wealth of information, and she just has so much great info to share with you today. Welcome to the show, Jean.
Hey, Lisa, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we are going to talk about how to get into college. And I guess both of us have the same idea, like pretty much anybody can get into college right now. Would you agree? Like it's not that hard to actually get admitted into college.
Oh, no, 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 not admitted. Money, that's another story.
Money is a different story. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because I keep telling people the question isn't, can your kid get into college? It is, how are you going to help your kids pay for college without a lot of debt? Because I think when I went to college, I went to a private Christian college in the Midwest. It cost $20,000 for my entire degree. I got some scholarships. My parents helped me pay for it. I worked every break all summer, a couple jobs, and I graduated debt free. But those days are kind of over. That same college that cost $5,000 a year back then, it now costs $37,000 a year. And so if you add up all that, that's like, 120,000 plus. And on the average, most kids are taking 6 years, not four to graduate. So, you know, the whole idea that I paid my way through so my kids can too is a little naive. And Jean, you're here to tell us how your kids can actually hack college costs. So I'm so glad you're here. It's an important discussion.
Well, thank you. And you know what's great is there's no necessarily one strategy. There's a lot of different ones. But I think if as a family, you can just take the mindset of there is a way to go to college and go to college for free. It takes the average student almost 21 years to pay off college debt,
Wow.
or 2 decades of your life paying for something that you did in 4 years. It is a lousy investment
Yeah.
if that happens to you, and that's kind of the average. And so you're seeing these kids today that graduate, they can't get a mortgage, they are maybe delaying having a family, getting married, having kids, all that based on the debt. And so I think knowledge is so important. Knowledge is power. It really is. And if you have the knowledge and you know what to do, that doesn't have, you don't have to be a statistic. Everybody talks about, the 70% of students who leave college with debt, but they
Yeah.
don't talk about the 30%
Right.
that do walk away debt free. And so we've been teaching families how to get free college for almost 18 years now.
Wow, that's crazy. How did you get into this? Is this your background? Like, are you professional? Get out of college for free kind of guru?
Oh gosh, no, actually, I never plan on having a company. Uh, like you and most of your audience, as a homeschooler, we were one income,
Yep.
no money for college, zero saved up at all.
Yeah.
But in the back of our minds, it was one of those things that we always wanted our kids to do. And when my son was in ninth grade, I was at a friend's house, and she kind of just sort of mentioned in passing, "Did you know you can get free college off a test score?" And I thought, well, no, I didn't know that. Well, okay, well, maybe this is a way we can get some college money. And so with my son Josh, without no money for college, we definitely had no money for one of those expensive prep schools that may or may not work. And so we had to kind of do stuff on our own. We bought some books at the store. We took a couple of local classes. We went through tons and tons of practice tests over and over again, figuring out what worked, what didn't work. And short story long, he became a National Merit Scholar.
Wow.
And we ended up throwing away 7 trash bags of college offers. And
Wow.
these were like every day my mailbox filled up with letters and information from colleges all across this nation. And this went on for about a year. And so the offers were things like, Josh, if you come here, we'll give you a full ride. Another college might say, well, Josh, if you come here, we'll give you a full ride and we'll pay for your honors dorm.
Wow.
Or one might say, hey, Josh, come here, we'll give you a full ride and pay for your grad school.
Wow.
Or we'll give you money to study abroad, or we'll give you $5,000 spending cash. I had no idea at the time why it meant so much to them to bring in someone with a high test score. I know now, but I didn't know back then. And so our decision went from how in the world are we going to pay for college to where in the world should he go, because he had so many offers. And so then my daughter got scholarships, and people were calling me going, oh my goodness, how did y'all get free college? And that's when I thought, well, little this, little that, very helter skelter. But ultimately, I put together a book.
Mhm.
I wrote a book. I put together a class. I started it at my home with about 3 homeschooling friends I knew. And then more people kept coming to my home, and then my living room, my kitchen were filling up with kids. And then I had schools calling me saying, would you come and teach us at my school? And then I'd have people say, well, I don't live in your city, but if I get a few kids together, will you come to my city? I'm like, okay. And then it would progress from, hey, would you come to my state and teach? I'm like, okay. And then it was, now would you come to my country? So I've taught our program has been taught live in almost every state, and in 5 other countries.
Wow.
So
That's
that's kind of what happened. That was not something I plan on doing.
That's crazy. I love it. I love it. So you piqued my interest with one thing you said. You weren't sure why schools were so interested in your kid coming and why they wanted to add all these extra things onto the package. What was the reason? Do you mind sharing that now?
Absolutely. So colleges are a business,
Yeah.
and what they want to do is they want to look good. So they get national rankings based on their test scores. So the higher the score, the higher their rankings go up. So when the rankings go up, they can get more funding. They can attract students who can pay full sticker price, and they need the higher rankings, because you often let in these athletes who are very talented, but the athletes only need the minimum to get in, not the maximum, or not a high score, just the minimum. And when you bring in an athlete, now your rankings drop low, your test scores drop low. So they're out looking for these students with high scores. They're willing to give them a free ride, roll out that red carpet for them, because it's going to make the colleges look good. And
Interesting.
so it's a game, and you just have to know the game, and you play the game. And that's why ultimately the test scores are the number one thing to get free college. 85% of colleges are going to admit and
Mhm.
give money on test scores alone.
Wow, 85%. You hear so many questions about transcripts, but you're saying really test scores are the number one thing colleges are looking for.
Well, absolutely. So here's the thing. As a homeschooling mom, we're not saying have bad transcript. Not
Right.
at all. No bad GPAs. I know we're saying. But especially for homeschoolers, those colleges can look at that and say, well, how do I know you didn't make that up? How do I know though you just didn't give your kids mommy grades?
Yeah.
You need something to validate your transcript. You need something that gives that credibility. But
Right.
it's not just for homeschoolers. Your families out there that go to public or private school. If you think about it, a 4.0 at one high school is not the same at another.
Yeah.
Every school weighs and calculates their scores differently. And so the only fair way to compare all students equally is a test score. It's standardized the student. It's a standardized test with standardized questions and answers. And so it levels the playing field, because one student might go to a really hard school, rigorous school, and have a certain GPA. But then the kid down the street goes to an easy school and has easy teachers and
Yeah.
has the same GPA as your child. Now you look the same on paper.
Mhm.
What's a college going to do? And
Right.
that's why the test scores make all the difference, and especially for homeschoolers.
Yeah. So what happened during 2020 when everybody said, we don't need test scores, it's no big deal? I kept telling people, take those tests. What did you tell them?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, the issue was when the world shut down, and we in Texas call it a scamdemic. I don't know how y'all do that in South Dakota, but that's what we do. Um, so when the world shut down, or we were all in house arrest, um, they shut the SETs and ACTs down across the nation because you couldn't go anywhere. We were
Right.
all homebound. And now, if you knew about the CLT, you could have taken it. Every college would have accepted it because it was already remotely proctored. And matter of fact, their enrollment went up like 5,000% a week.
Wow.
So what the colleges ended up doing, I mean, that was a big mess anyways, because of the fact that they were having kids inside dorms. You couldn't go
Right.
inside dorms. You had to do online. So beyond COVID, which is another like BC, before COVID,
Yeah.
BC, beyond COVID, um, the school said, okay, we're going to stay test optional until 2023.
Hmm.
So something very interesting happened last year. And that was that MIT, which is
Hmm.
now ranked the number 2 college. It was not number 2 before this. It was it was in the top 10, but it wasn't number 2. They said, you know what? We're going to return back to testing. because not only is it the only fair way to compare all students, it is doing a disservice to students who are in underserved communities, because these students don't have the luxury of going to a very expensive high school, a
Right.
prep school. But the one thing they can do is take the exact same test everybody else takes. And so once MIT return and Purdue return, you started seeing them come back. But let me give you the truth about test optional. This is what's going to blow most people's mind.
Yeah.
They're lying to you.
Yeah.
Test optional is test opportunity missed. And here's
Right.
why. When a school announces we're test optional, or we have a test optional policy, what happens is that means when they send out their applications and you don't have to send in a test score, that basically means you have a low score.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means they could reject you, which means their yield goes up. They can say, well, we only have an 8% acceptance rate. Well, you know why? Because they send out way more applications because more people applied. And when more people applied, more people got rejected.
Right.
And so, and they don't have to figure those test scores in their rankings. If a student, so let's say you have, let's say your ranking is, your average SAT score is 1300, for example, and you do end up admitting some test optional students just for whatever. Those numbers are not figured into the rankings, so it's not going to affect their rankings at all.
Wow.
Because their rankings, freshman scores. So they can say we're test optional all day and all night, but it doesn't mean it doesn't open up more diversity by any means. Right. And they're only going to admit so many kids anyways. So if I'm a college admissions counselor and I'm touring between a kid who's got a 1350 and I got a kid who didn't do their testing because they probably scored low, who am I going to admit? Right. I want to help my rankings. So I'm only at a 1300. The 1350 is going to help me go up. Right. And so it's a joke. And the money is based on the rankings. It's tied directly to your test scores. Right. Because it makes them look good. And so I think the key is when a school says, and test optional is very different than test blind. Right. And the whole fact of the matter is they really do look at the scores. And if they don't look at the scores, then they have to put more emphasis on other criterion, like your essays and like your extracurriculars, all that. But even then, that's not only subjective, coached. Like kids that, they always used to talk about how only the rich kids get the high score. Well, that is actually not true. We had no money for college. How does that factor in? It's not a matter of, I know test prep companies that charge 5, 10,000 or more, and they teach the complete wrong stuff and scores go down because they're teaching content and math and vocabulary and not teaching that this is logic. And so what happens is that when your kids don't take the test, when they have to look at essays. But here's the thing: people who have money hire essay coaches. Right. And a lot of times they write the essays for the kids. Yeah. Wow. So, and it's another data point that they have to look at. And by the way, so many staff members quit at a lot of these colleges because they had because when they removed the testing as a criterion for college entrance, they had to not only go through essays and resumes and extracurriculars and transcripts, they had to research all of those things to see if they were even true, as opposed to a test score, which is a set score. You get it from the test makers themselves. And so they were so overworked. They were so overworked that now many of them were running on skeletal office members, because it was just so much information. They were just overloaded based on that. So, and the other thing, I think one of the things is we're going to see is a pendulum swing anyways, is because the dropout rate right now in college is pretty bad. And this is just BC before COVID. About 25 or so percent will drop out after the freshman year. 50% will drop out after the sophomore year. And when it's all said and done, only 1/3 will graduate in 4 years. Right. Right. Many of them, even the 6 years. Okay. Right. So what's happening here is, if you've got 2/3 of kids dropping out and you open up the pool to anybody and everybody, right, dropout rate is going to increase even more so than that, because now you're using no discretion at all. And kids who don't have any rigor in high school, they're going to get to high school and it's college, and it's going to be a shock. because they barely crack a book in high school as it is. And now all of a sudden you got to spend 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours of studying per class per day.
Mhm.
It's gonna get bad.
Yeah.
You're gonna see people dropping the whole test optional thing. Before before COVID, it was about 15% of colleges that were test optional.
Yeah. And I always tell parents, make it easy for the college to give your kid money. And if they don't have a test, it makes it that much more difficult. If they have a
Yep.
test, it's so much easier for someone to hand your kid money. So just for that alone. But wow, that was so helpful, Jean. For those of us parents who like, we're not SAT, ACT test experts. We're not experts in testing at all. I mean, it's the homeschool world. Come on. Like, I think there's this test avoidance thing going around. But how do people get started preparing their kids for tests? Because I know those companies, they charge a boatload of money. They guarantee test scores. I mean, it's like thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And it is really a rigorous program. Like, they are like really making those kids go through the paces to get those test scores. But for those of us who just have normal families, normal kids, and have a normal background in testing, where do we even start? And how do we best help our kids?
Well, first of all, one thing to your point about the guarantee, I want to tell people, read the guarantee. Because
Yeah.
almost every one of these courses, even the ones that are 5, 10, 20,000, I've had kids who scores dropped after spending $10,000 or $15,000. The guarantee, read the fine line. They often say, number one, you have to show up to every class.
Yeah.
You have to do every bit of homework. You have to turn everything in. And then if you've done all that and you still didn't raise your score or get that certain point raised, you can retake the class again. It's not necessarily a money guarantee. It is, oh, we'll make sure. And if you didn't do the stuff the first time, what's going to make you think the second time is going to help?
Right.
Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is, most of these companies, they teach the wrong stuff. They teach your student content. They'll teach you more and more math concepts and thousands of vocabulary words and lots of basic grammar rules. All these things are a waste of time. Your kids don't need to learn all that stuff. They're just reteaching school over again when they do that. These are logic tests, and the questions are purposely misleading, and the wrong answers can be very appealing. This is why you see even the really, really smart kids like valedictorians bomb the SAT, because it's a skill set that's completely different than you would use for just like a normal class, and it's not being taught in most schools. And so the key is knowing, number one, it's not about how smart your child is, what their IQ, what school they go to. None of that has anything to do with beating these tests. The key is knowing that they are logic tests, they're based on critical thinking, and because it's a standardized test with standardized questions and standardized answers, that means they do the exact same thing on every single test. So that means you don't study for the test. You can't study a bunch of stuff. You study the tests themselves and the patterns. The patterns recur on every test. And so you study the patterns and you learn what the question is asking, the trick answers that they use every single time, because again, they're testing your critical thinking. How well can you answer questions under pressure in a short amount of time? That's what they want to know. Because if we had all day long, or you had 5 minutes per every math problem, everybody could answer it. But they create the test, like for example, math, but there's a really long way, the normal math way, 3 or 4 minutes to work it out. And then there's a way to answer it in 30 seconds or less. Which student will be the critical thinker, the one who probably will be successful in college, because that's what one of the shows the signs of readiness is critical thinking. And what they do is make it a way that if you know the fast ways, now it's always accuracy before speed. You get good, then you get fast. You can answer every question very quickly once you understand it. And that, of course, that takes practice. That takes you learning the patterns and then putting the time in. We have a program, not a pill. Anybody who wants instant success or they want to shortcut the shortcut, they're not going to go far anyways.
Right. So really, you're advocating that the kids learn the patterns and they learn the test. And one of the things I really appreciated hearing from you this last conference season is that once they understand how to take one standardized test, they know how to take every standardized test. Wow, that was like really eye-opening to me, because I always thought you had to study the SAT or you had to study the ACT, but you're saying study how to take standardized tests and you're good to go.
You know what, Lisa? And obviously I'm a little biased being a homeschooling mom.
Yeah.
But test taking should be a class in every homeschool,
Yeah.
because our kids will be tested all their life. Now, it should be in every public and private school too, as well.
Yeah.
But because here's the thing, not just getting into college and getting scholarship money, of course, but if your child goes on to post grad school, law school, med school, if
Yeah.
at their job someday, I get engineers and nurses and people all the time in those professions say to me, we get tested like every 6 months for certifications, and they're not testing us on our degree. They're testing us on our critical thinking skills. And so, we've had people not only use our program, of course, on the SATs and the ACTs and PSATs and CLTs, but the GRE, the LSAT, the MCAT, the real estate test, the CPA test, the Hobby Lobby test, where you have to take a test to go work at the store. The ASVAB, the Mandarin test. I mean, I could list all the tests that people said, wow, your strategies worked on this and this and this. And so it's true. So we are actually doing our kids a disservice by not teaching them test taking skills,
Yeah.
because whether they don't choose to go to college or not, at their job, they will probably be tested.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so you need to know the same skills will apply to just about any test, because here's what they do. If you're a standardized test company and you're going to write a test, what you do is you create a question where there's only one objective, indisputable answer, and then several distractors.
Yeah.
And you, as a good critical thinker, you learn what the distractors are and you eliminate those, which ultimately leaves you with the right answer.
Right. Well, what great life skill right there, right there. What about kids with test anxiety or just general anxiety? I mean, I get this question all the time. My kid has anxiety. I don't want to put standards on them. I don't want to have end dates. How can we like circumvent that with standardized tests? What do you say to that?
Well, number one, anxiety is always going to be there, sadly. So it's more comes
Yeah.
down to more managing it as opposed to
Yeah.
eliminating it.
Right.
And the other thing is too is anxiety comes from things we don't know. If you have never met somebody for the first time, you're anxious before you meet them. Okay. Same thing with testing. The more familiar you are with the test, you start to lessen the anxiety. You start to gain that test maturity. A good example would be the guy that plays in the Masters for golf.
Yeah.
He doesn't just happen to just show up on the day of the Masters hoping he's going to do well. He has been on that course many, many times over many months and many years practicing, so that the one day that he does qualify for the Masters, he knows it so well.
Yeah.
And so kids who start learning the test and the test format, they're not going to walk in there blindly, sort of putting all their eggs in one basket. They're going to know the test. They're going to know the tricks. They're going to know the strategies. They're going to know the patterns, and they're going to know what to look for. So you can lessen anxiety by getting to know the test itself and doing a lot of practice tests.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said, test maturity, because I think my husband's a great test taker. He has a PhD. He can take a standardized test and knock it out of the park. I mean, literally, like he can get in the top 1%. I am like the world's worst test taker, or at least I used to be way back in the day. And it always just felt like I missed the test gene pool. I didn't get that gene. But I just think part of it is like, right, just recognizing patterns and understanding what they're doing. And I did have a lot of anxiety because I felt like I was so bad at it. So I'd get into the test and I'd just be like, I'm going to do crappy on this test. And that was just my attitude because I felt like I'd failed before. But I love what you say about test maturity. It's like anything, those first couple of times are going to be awkward, and you just have to push through the awkward to get to the point where you feel at ease with it, right? That's a great.
Exactly. That's why starting early is key.
Yeah.
I've got seventh graders who score higher than seniors on their SATs.
Wow.
And they haven't even been to high school yet because they learned the patterns. Here's the thing about it is there are generally two types of test takers.
Yeah.
Person who says, I'm a good test taker, like your husband.
Yeah.
Why is he a good test taker naturally? Because he is very logically minded.
Yeah.
It's intuitive to him.
Yeah.
He sees the patterns naturally. And even sometimes students who will come to me who already have pretty high scores, they don't know everything. And so a few little things can put them over the top.
Yeah.
And then you have the other student. This is the rule follower.
Yeah.
This is the person who second guesses himself, overthinks the question, stresses over everything. The great thing about logic is it's not a personality trait.
Right.
It's a trait skill.
Yeah.
So just because your husband is more logically minded, he's born that way, he's more bent that way, doesn't mean that you can't be a great test taker, because you can logic, like golf, piano, all those are skills that can be learned and perfected by anybody, just about. And
Yeah.
so just because somebody's naturally born doing well in the piano, someone over here can practice and learn it and do just as well.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with testing. So you can become a good test taker by understanding the test and doing and practicing the right way.
Well, you just gave a lot of people a lot of hope by saying that, because I think too, again, test taking is tied to money. So even 1 point higher can be the difference between 10,000 a year and a full ride.
Yep.
And 10,000 a year sounds like a lot, except if you start thinking about colleges are charging $27,000 a year, that
Oh,
leaves
that's a cheap one.
yeah, that's a
That's
cheap
cheap.
one. That still leaves 17,000 a year. That's like
Yep.
$8,000 or whatever. I'm adding really fast in my head, but $60,000 is a lot of money to cough up. So if you can get a full ride scholarship because your kids answered one more question correctly, it's
Right.
worth it. Jean, what is the best way for parents to prepare for tests? I mean, I remember when we were doing it, yeah, I'm like this old, decades ago, we would give it those big, heavy, hefty tomes from, the booksellers, and sit there and slog through the vocabulary list and stuff like that. What do you suggest for learning how to take the test?
Well, number one, be very, very, very careful. Almost every single book on the market, almost most test prep companies, not only do they teach the wrong stuff,
Hmm.
or the math and more
Yeah,
science or English or whatever. Okay, that's a waste of time, frustrates the kids.
yeah,
But here's a little sneaky trick. They do a lot of sneaky tricks, a lot of unethical things. But one of the things they'll do, whether it's buying a big book at the store or whether it's going and spending several $1,000s on a prep company, is they'll give your students a very hard
hmm,
diagnostic test that
yeah.
they made up on
Oh,
purpose. So your kids will do terrible. Then you go through their program, you spend the money and do all that. And then they give them another test at the end that's very, very easy that
wow.
they made up. And so it might show that they went up 200, 300 points on their SAT or 4 or 5 points on their ACT. So everybody's happy. Mom's happy, dad's happy, the kids are happy. Now, the kid goes, takes the actual SAT or ACT and does not do well, or the score doesn't change, or it might even drop. So now parents being completely, and I cannot tell you how many parents are clueless. They go, I had no idea those weren't real tests.
Yeah,
Um, and so what happens is the parents are like, well, you just didn't study enough.
yeah,
The company's like, well, you just didn't study enough,
yeah,
you know? Um, but they didn't tell them that the results were very deceptive. I could do that. I absolutely would never do that. I could certainly do that. And boy, I could write the hardest test and the
yeah,
easiest test. And man, you'd walk out of here going, oh, I'll raise my score 400 points. No, 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 no. We don't do that. Our students take a real College Board SAT. It's one that's free online on their website, and they have a baseline score. They go through our program and they retake the exact same test again,
yeah.
no variations.
Wow.
And that's where we get our average student. A lot of our schools definitely track the students,
Yeah,
and 200 to 250 will be an average that students will go up the first time
wow.
through. And the good thing, even if you go up a couple hundred points the first time through, you've only just heard the information one time. Maybe you remember about 10% of it.
Yeah,
The next time you go through the program or the e-course, you're going to pick up something you missed the first time.
right.
Maybe you'll go up another 100 points or so, because you have to keep hearing it and hearing it more than one time, like just like everything else
Yeah,
that you practice with. And so the key is just learning that these tests are beatable. No matter how your kid feels after taking a test, they feel dumb or they feel like I'm not good. Throw that out the window. It's not
yeah,
that you're not good. It's like trying to write an essay using math equations. Doesn't make
yeah,
any sense. If you are approaching SAT or ACT, PSAT, CLT, just like a test at school, you're not going to get the best possible score because it's not the same test.
yeah,
It's a totally different a ball game here when it comes
yeah,
to this test. And once you understand that, and I get people all the time when I teach families and kids how to answer the questions in 30 seconds or less.
yeah,
I mean, it's a light bulb moment. The kids
yeah,
they walk away confident and
yeah.
motivated and excited.
It is.
Occasionally,
It is a light bulb, Gina. I just want to share this with the listeners. You do this, you have a great booth set up at the conferences where you actually teach some strategies right there. And one of the math strategies you taught me, I went back to the booth and I told my daughter, oh my gosh, this is so easy and simple. And like, it just makes so much sense. Why didn't I think of it myself? I mean, those are the kind of strategies you're teaching. It's not like You don't have to take more algebra. You just have to know how to talk to the test in the way the test is written. It's that straightforward. And you know these tips and strategies. It's fantastic.
Well, yes, absolutely. Because here's the thing. It's not a math test. It's a
Right.
logic test using math as a medium. I
Yeah.
get a lot of kids who are good in math. They love math. It's a number one subject in school, but it's always the lowest test score
Yeah.
because they approach it like a normal test,
Right.
working out every problem, spending 3 minutes on a problem that you get a minute on. So now you're just burning the clock up.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is that it is, if you can understand that it is just it's logic and critical thinking.
Yeah.
That's the one thing we all have in common, no matter what we do in Texas is
Right.
not what the kids do in South Dakota.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so the thing about it is that not only is it a standardized test, it's beatable. And when I show the patterns and I show you this question will take you like 3 minutes to work out, but let me show you the fast way to answer it. I have had over the years, and I still tend to get that occasionally, and it's usually a parent, not
Yeah.
a student. Well, you're just teaching kids to cheat.
Oh,
So I've learned
interesting.
how to answer these families.
Yeah.
I said, well, first of all, let's define cheating.
Yeah.
Cheating is if I gave your kids the answers ahead of time. That is cheating.
Yeah.
If you take a history test, do you study history? Yeah. If you take a geography test, do you study geography? Yeah. If you're going to take a logic test, wouldn't you study the logical patterns? I mean, I think that
Yeah.
when people get it, they get it. You're still going to always have your haters. They're going to be out there. You strike a nerve with them sometimes. Sometimes people get mad at you, but it doesn't deter me because I know what actual cheating is.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
showing you how to approach these tests with a critical eye, how to look at them very logically. I mean, some of the questions, example, ACT in their English section gives you 5 passages, 70 questions, and it comes down to 36 seconds per question.
Wow.
You've got to somehow read 5 passages and answer every question in 36. There's logistically no way.
Right.
Once
And
you understand how to do it,
yeah.
and how you can use your logic skills to find the answers, it changes your life.
Right. And the thing with all the standardized tests right now is you get dinged for not answering the questions, even if if you answer it and the question is wrong, you do better than if you don't answer the question. So you really do want to get through the questions and answer all of them. So Jean, where can people find your program, and tell us the name of it? And we'll put links too, so people can just click and find you, but tell us the name of it and how long it takes and all that kind of stuff.
So College Prep Genius, you can just go to our website, collegeprepgenius.com,
Mhm.
and learn more about us. We have online e-courses. We have live virtual classes. We teach for True North.
Yeah.
So if you are a student there, go there and register. We'll be teaching again in the fall. And a lot has to do with your student. If you are a student who needs more accountability, the live classes are great because you get an actual teacher on Zoom. Actually, we use Canvas. But you get to actually interact. You get to ask questions. You get instant feedback, so you know why the right answer is right, why the wrong ones are wrong,
Right.
so that you can self-correct your mistakes. And then for the live classes at True North or even on our site, it actually you get our e-course as a bonus because we
Yeah.
know we want you to go back over it and be successful. So
Yeah.
you get to have that for a whole year afterward. You get to go back and listen to it
That's
again. You
amazing.
get to go back and do the quizzes and the homework, and
Yeah.
all those practice tests are available. It's some kids do better. Some are self-directed and they can just use the e-course. Some of them need more accountability. So
Yeah.
or they want a live teacher.
Yeah.
So
And this, I didn't ask this yet, but what's the best number of times to take a test, a standardized test? So if I know in the Midwest, a lot of colleges want the ACT, but on the coasts and for Ivy Leagues, they want the SAT. But what is the best number of times to take a test? 1, 10, 20, 3? Do you get dinged for taking it?
until you get the score you want.
Okay.
There's no penalties to take it unlimited amounts of
Right.
time.
Yeah.
But let me tell you also too, every single college takes SAT or ACT. It does not matter.
Right.
If they prefer one over the other, they'll convert the score. So like a 1340 SAT is like a 29 on the ACT. So doesn't matter where you live, there are some states, like you just said, that the high schools push one test over the other. Very unfortunate that they do that because a lot of like you said, the Midwest, those states tend to push the ACT.
Yeah.
And by the way, the SAT and ACT are like 99% the same test. So what you learn to beat one works on the other because there's a crossover information. So you don't, anytime a company wants to give you an SAT program and an ACT program and a PSAT program, they just want your money. You can use the same program for all of them.
Okay.
But what happens is when these high schools only push the ACT, which is where the middle states do that, they neglect the SAT, which means they neglect the PSAT, which is for the National Merit Contest. And that's where you can get amazing full rides, big money on the PSAT. So that they do their students a disservice by only pushing the ACT. I'm not loyal to anybody except for what gets the kids the free college. That's what I don't care. SAT or ACT doesn't matter. And I love the CLT, of course.
Yes.
We are the official test prep for the CLT.
That's awesome.
And so I got a lot of my kiddos are in the top 1% on that test because again, the strategies work for all of them.
Yeah.
And beyond that, like, my son was offered numerous free rides to law school. My daughter was offered free grad school. I've had kids who've got free med school because if you're going to go to law school, they're not testing you on law. Because you don't know anything. That's the whole purpose of going to law school. If you're going to med school, you don't know a lot about medicine. That's the purpose of going to med school. They're going to test you on your critical thinking skills. And once you have those skills, you can apply them to just about any test. And it will change your life, whether it's getting the scholarship money, whether it's at your job or wherever.
Yeah. Yeah. And are the kids dinged if they take the test more times than not? Like, no. The colleges don't care, right? They're going to take the top test score and throw out the rest because that's going to make them look better.
Oh, not only do they super score, taking high scores for different tests, they want you to keep taking it because that means the higher you get it, the higher their rankings go. They'll give you more money, but then they get a better ranking. So anybody that says that, let me tell you something, Lisa. One of the things that's so discouraging as not only as a parent, but also as someone who has a company, is the misinformation that people hear, whether it's from social media or a friend or well-meaning friend, guidance counselor, someone who went to college 30 years ago, whatever it is, giving them tests are going away, or it doesn't matter if you're a homeschooler, all this stuff. I always tell people this: unless those people are willing to pay for your kids' college, if they're wrong, don't trust them. Trust people who are in the business every single day and know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think I hear a lot about this as far as transcripts and credits and test scores in college too. And it's really from when the parents went, which was 20 to 30 years ago. And that is such outdated information. It was outdated before 2020, but even more so since 2020. The world has changed and education has absolutely changed. So you really want to get the most up-to-date information from somebody like Jean, who's in this field and really studies it and knows what she's talking about. So this was really super informative, Jean. Anything else you want to share that we didn't cover yet?
Well, one of the things I think people are concerned about is that the SAT is going digital in March of 2024. PSAT at the end of this year. Don't be concerned. The SAT has changed 3 times since I started this. And we're using the same strategies that we used back in 2001 with my kids. And what they do is it's all based on pressure. It's all pressure, what's going on. The last time they changed it because California wanted an essay. The next time they change it is because of the pandemic. We gotta go digital because we couldn't get people tested. We lost all that money. But the formatting is what's changing. Don't fear that. We've looked at we're updating our program as we get more and more information because College Board historically hasn't really released the real test yet. They're waiting to the end of summer to release a real PSAT, which is frustrating. But what I've looked at and what may end up being the final question types, it's the same strategies that I've been teaching for all these years. It is just a different formatting is what it is. And so that's why you can take the stuff that you learn and, apply it to the new test, to the old test that's still in effect. You're definitely, you're definitely gonna become you can be ahead of the game no matter what. You don't gotta worry. Well, let's wait till the test changes or the program changes. No. You can't get time back.
Right.
And when every day you waste it cost you 2 days in the future, because
Mm.
now you got to borrow from another day that you were going to be doing something else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why they need to start now, because some kids, we got kids 6th and 7th graders do our program.
Yeah.
There are some kids, and you might even have a really, really smart kid, and you think, oh, they'll catch this thing really quick, and
Yeah.
they don't.
Yeah.
And some kids get it faster than others, and some kids take, a longer time. But why would you gamble that risk?
Right.
The,
Right.
the kind of scholarship money you can get, thinking, well, let me tell you, I've had the parents call me, oh, my kid, he gets everything the first time. Well, evidently not. I mean, one
Mhm.
lady was so irate with me one time. She called me and she said, well, my son took your class, your 2-day boot camp, and his score didn't raise. I said, well, so how long ago did he take the class? It was like a month before. But
Yeah.
okay, well, I did 10 sit-ups a month ago. I don't have a 6-pack. I
Yeah.
don't get it. I mean, it was that crazy. But then I went on to ask her, so after the boot camp, how many times did he go back through the e-course?
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
How many did he do the quizzes? Yeah, no. How many practice tests did he take?
Yeah.
She says to me, my son always gets everything the first time. I'm
Hmm.
going, evidently he didn't.
Right. Right.
I don't know what world you live in that,
Yeah.
you can just go through one time and think you got it. He
Yeah.
didn't raise his score. So
Yeah.
all the things he thought he didn't have to do, he had to
What
do.
did you do?
I asked,
Yeah.
I said, I go, did he play sports? Does he play sports? No. Does he play music? No. I said, well, what does he do? Well, he's in drama.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So, when he gets a big thick book and play, he reads it through one time. And he's got all of his lines down perfectly the first time, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Crickets.
Yeah.
Nothing. I don't know. Sometimes the parents are worse than the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
just think that their kid is it,
Yeah.
and I don't know what world that they live in nowadays. These students who often think they're entitled and the world owes them something, because that's not how life really is. You think about very professional athletes who are at the top of their game, who play National League
Right.
football or basketball or whatever. These are the people who showed up early,
Yeah.
did all the hard exercises that nobody else wanted to do. They stayed late. They did everything to get to that level.
Yeah.
And so if you want to excel at test prep or anything, and you know what, you got to do the work.
You got to do the
You
work.
know,
I think it's really good that you mentioned that, because your program and any other program, hopefully that's worth its weight and worth the money that you pay for it, you have to put the time in. It's not just you pay the money and you have this magical thing occurs, but what you're saying is pay the money and you will have a program that will assure success if you work the program. And
but yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a
But
community effort.
you pay now or you pay later exponentially in a lot of college debt. I love what Zig Ziglar says. He says you can't get upset for the results you don't get for the work you don't do.
Oh,
And
that's awesome. Yeah.
you get people like that lady. She was upset that her child didn't get the results, but he didn't put the work in.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you tell them, next time kids, they go to their coach,
Yeah.
and the coach says, did you run this? Did you do your sprints over the weekend? Did you do your sit-ups? Did you do your weights? And they're like, no, no, no. He's not going to go, okay. He's going to say, go sit on the bench. You're not playing in the game today because you didn't
Exactly.
do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's how life is. And I think we've done such a disservice as a generation, this time frame that we're in, where we live where the kids have just sort of been handed everything and they have no skin in the game and
Yeah.
they don't appreciate it. And I'm thinking in general,
Yeah.
not to your audience.
Right.
That's not what I mean. But I think the first time these kids are going to be told no,
Hmm.
like they get rejected by the boy or the girl or the job or the class, whatever it is, they're going to fall apart.
Yeah.
They haven't, they're not tough.
Yeah.
And failure is what very often leads to success, because
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try something different, instead of going, oh no, the world hates me. No, you know
Yeah.
what? So you
Yeah,
got
failure,
to do the
you
work.
have to fail towards success. It's just part of success. I mean, it's just one of the steps towards success is failure. So yeah, absolutely. So you guys, you can find Jean online. I'll put the links here. You can sign up for our classes. You can sign up for the classes through True North Homeschool Academy. I want to let you guys know that Jean and we had so much fun doing a panel at Great Homeschool Conventions in Ohio, and we will be doing it again in Texas together. It's called You Can Thank Us Later, and it's all about homeschooling high school. And Jean is a blast in person. So she has other workshops at the conventions too that really gets more in depth about how to prepare your kids for college, how to get them free college. And they're so informative and helpful. And so thanks for listening, everybody. If you have any questions for Jean about how to get college paid for free, you can reach out to her on the It's Not That Hard homeschool Facebook groups. You can reach out to us through email or touch base with me and I'll get the questions to Jean. Jean,
Thanks,
thanks so
Lisa.
much for being. Yeah, I'm so glad. It was so fun to talk to you. I learned something from you every time we talk, and I was sitting here taking notes again. So thanks for joining me today. Okay, you guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much.